Why don't we start off with yesterday's announcement first? It was short on detail, no numbers, no dates, no sense of how money is going to be allocated. And I think the market was disappointed. If you look at the share price of some companies, they did drop pretty quickly after 12 o'clock. Was it what you expected?
Well, I think, having been kind of peripherally involved in the 232 process, which, by the way, ended last July. And so the Nuclear Fuel Working Group was an entirely new creation from the Trump administration. And I think with the 13 federal agencies involved, there's always a little skepticism of how a group that large, representing such a diverse number of areas within the government, are going to come together, which they did. But I think that there was some expectations of, more specific actions. I think they've laid out, obviously there's more direction, but I think as, Mark Chalmers at Energy Fuel said, this is the first comprehensive study of the U.S. fuel cycle in decades. And so that's an important first step. And the Secretary of Energy, though, made the comment that this is a roadmap. In other words, this will allow the government now, they've proposed to have a senior administration official oversee kind of the ongoing process. I understand there's even a call later today where the stakeholders, which would probably be producers, processors, certainly the utilities, NEI, will all have a chance, I think, to begin to discuss some of the details, perhaps, of how does this now get implemented. And I think one of the bigger issues, though, Matt, is the length of time we're dealing with. I mean, on the uranium side, they talked about the uranium reserve being put in place, and it may be something that enhances the American Assured Fuel stockpile program, which was put in place actually back in 2012. And they put some numbers, 17 to 19 million pounds beginning this year. But you can assume, is it a 10-year program, which they've talked about? Will it be some ramp up? Well, again, those kinds of details are really lacking. And the other that's important is how do they allocate that? When they submitted their 2021 budget request, it said to keep at least 2 U.S. uranium mines in operation. Well, that's, first of all, that's a pretty meager domestic industry. Most of the projects are pretty small in situ recovery mines. So do they actually mean specific mines, companies? What will be the annual volume? The Secretary of Energy said yesterday they don't have a process for determining pricing, which is pretty important. I think the producers have told the government that they need really a long-term government commitment at reasonable prices, considering the production cost profile in the U.S. And it's got to go on in order for it to allow them to raise capital, to rehire people, to, again, restart their facilities. I think one of the issues clearly is they've stated that it's only no commitment is made beyond the 2021 budget request. So right now it's a once-off situation. So anyway, I think the market, the investment side was expecting, more specifics, and they may come in time, but it may take a while. So,
yeah, thanks for the answer. I think the thing that was missing as well was an indication of how it's going to engage with the stakeholders. There's a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of money to be deployed. There's a lot of planning and economics to be worked out. The time frame here is, or potentially could take a long time to put together before anyone's in a position to make a decision about allocating budgets. And even then, it's got to go through a congressional process of approval. even though this is a bipartisan proposal or recommendation, this is going to be a long time in the making. How do uranium miners, because that's what we're here to talk about today, how do uranium miners get an understanding or a sense of how they benefit and when?
Well, again, I'm trying to make a determination of how the government is going to approach a newly created entity or activity. They may decide we've got to put a lot of resources. We'll have a lot of video conferencing. We'll, make decisions quickly. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think normally the government is very deliberate in how they do things. So it may take a while. And again, I think that one of the issues, there's a lot of U.S. producers, when you look across those that have existing facilities, those that have proposed developments that they've been working on for years. I don't want to necessarily identify specific companies, but the list, as you point out, is fairly lengthy. I just looked this morning at in situ recovery capability. If you look at all of the projects existing, proposed, it's above 20 million pounds a year, which no one, the most anything's been produced recently is below 5. So again, I think there'll be a lot of stakeholders, as you say, involved, and it will be a interesting process.
Okay, so given the big thing we heard there was that the U.S. government would be acquiring or establishing a uranium reserve, and you've talked about the 17 to 19 million pounds over a 10-year period. Right now as today, I can think of a couple of companies, and between them they maybe could put together £1 million today. They're also going to need to see the price recover to a point where it's economic for them to get their facilities back up and running. And of course, I'm referring to the two petitioners here in this instance. I know lots of people throwing their hat in the ring about how quickly they get back into production, but they all need a price to be incentivized to do that. It's nowhere near that at the moment. So it's nice to see spot price at $33, but it's going to be better for these companies to understand what utilities are prepared to pay in terms of term contracts, however they're structured. And we are going to talk about that later here. So that's the only thing I'm seeing, building of a reserve. What can it mean, and what can investors interpret that as meaning for the companies that they may be invested in, U.S. companies?
So what will happen on with the producers? And yeah, I think that some have been preparing for the commercial market to improve to the point where they can be participants. But I think, as you know, it's all about the timing and how long does it take. It's like Fukushima. Tim Gitzel at Cameco has said, never thought 9 years later we would be where we are. Finally, the market is seemingly beginning to respond. So I think that's a big factor for the U.S. production industry is, some have been able to benefit from long-term legacy uranium contracts, which has kept their operations going. Those have pretty much run out, or they've moved the deliveries forward in negotiations with the customers to benefit now rather than over the next few years. There are a couple of producers with contracts that are still in place, but they've really dropped off. So then the question becomes, what do you do now? Do you keep, they've had to cut back. Production now is virtually zero. So you've got these several companies that have gone to bare minimums. There's not really again, they'd have to rehire people. And so it's how long do the investors want to be involved in, kind of living off of very minor raisings? And when will the market be there? Let's put it that way, be it the government or the commercial market. So I think that's kind of, it's put them in a difficult position, even waiting until October 1st, if the $150 million is approved. you've still got another 5 months at least before there would be any funding available. So anyway, it's a difficult position right now, and that includes conversion. I mean, the Metropolis plant now has been shut down for well more than a year. I think it's approaching 2 years, and it'll take a while for them to get back in operation. I see they put a date of 2022 on that, and I understand they're still shipping yellow cake off site. It's being transferred to other converters to be toll converted, so they meet their delivery commitments. But that's a big deal when you move yellow cake off site from a conversion plant. So anyway, yeah, it's gotten down to where it's a difficult situation.